How could he do this? How could Seth freaking Rollins, the so-called visionary, the man who claimed to be the rock-solid foundation of Becky Lynch's life, turn into the very storm that shattered her? This wasn't just an argument. This wasn't just tension between two superstars with big egos. No, this was the night Seth Rollins crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. The night he turned a war of words into something so physical, so ugly, that Becky Lynch ended up in a hospital bed. You think you know what happened? You think you've heard the official WWE version of the story? Forget that. Because the truth is so much darker, so much messier, and it's the kind of truth that will make you question everything you thought you knew about Seth Rollins and his so-called love for Becky. This all started backstage, just minutes after Raw went off the air last Monday. Seth had just cut one of the most unhinged promos of his career, taking shots at half the locker room, the fans, and even management. But when he got backstage, Becky was waiting. She didn't look impressed. In fact, she looked furious. Word is, she told him point blank that he was letting the fame and ego eat him alive. And that's when Seth snapped. Now, I'm not talking about raised voices. I'm talking about chairs being kicked over, tables shaking, and people actually stepping back because they could see it. The wild, unstable look in Seth's eyes. Witnesses say he cornered Becky, pointing in her face, yelling about how she owed everything to him, about how without him, she wouldn't be the man. And then, it happened. Seth shoved her hard, so hard she hit the production crate behind her and collapsed. The entire backstage froze. No one moved for what felt like forever, and Becky wasn't getting up. It wasn't until medical staff rushed in that everyone realized how bad it was. Becky was clutching her ribs, barely able to breathe. The doctors called it severe bruising at first, but later that night, she was transported to a hospital for further scans. But here's the part WWE doesn't want you to know. This wasn't the first time their relationship had hit this kind of boiling point. The crowd's reaction is still echoing through the arena when Becky Lynch is finally loaded into the ambulance, her breathing shallow, eyes closed. And you could feel it. The energy wasn't just shock anymore, it was rage. Seth Rollins was being held back by security, his face a mix of guilt, confusion, and pure frustration. You could hear him screaming, "I didn't mean it." But the cameras caught the blood on his hands, and at that moment, intention didn't matter. Corey Graves' voice on commentary cut like a knife. You can say you didn't mean it all you want, Seth, but Becky is in the hospital. And you put her there. The replay hit the big screen, and the crowd's boos got louder. The shove, the slip, the fall into the metal barricade. Becky clutching her side and neck before collapsing. Seth's hands going straight to his head in disbelief. It looked bad. Meanwhile, backstage, the rest of the locker room was already talking. Charlotte Flair was seen whispering to Bayley with a sly smirk. Rhea Ripley, still sweaty from her match, walked right up to Seth and said coldly, "You just ended your own career, mate." Rollins tried to explain himself, but every single person seemed to have already picked a side, and most weren't on his. In the hospital parking lot, cameras caught Bianca Belair arriving. She ignored reporters' questions and went straight inside to check on Becky. Social media started buzzing within minutes. Hashtag justice for Becky and hashtag cancel Seth were trending worldwide. And here's the wild part. Sources close to WWE management were already leaking that Triple H had called an emergency meeting to review Seth Rollins' future with the company. You could see where this was going. The atmosphere backstage was beyond tense. Every step Roman Reigns took echoed through the halls like a warning bell, but tonight, those echoes carried a new kind of weight, one that even the bloodline couldn't control. Paul Heyman was trailing him like a man walking beside a ticking time bomb, desperately trying to read his expression, but Roman's face gave away nothing, until they turned the corner and saw her. Charlotte Flair, sitting on a production crate, one arm wrapped in ice, looking directly at Roman. Her eyes weren't filled with fear, they were filled with something much worse, disappointment. "Is this what you've become?" she asked, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the silence. Roman didn't respond at first. He just kept walking, but Charlotte stood, blocking his path. "You think this is dominance? You think destroying the locker room makes you a champion? No, Roman. This is desperation, and it's pathetic." The word, pathetic, hung in the air like poison. Heyman flinched. Jimmy Uso, who was lingering nearby, tensed, ready for whatever came next. Roman's jaw tightened, but instead of exploding, he smiled. A cold, dangerous smile. "You talk a lot for someone who's not holding gold anymore," Roman said, his voice calm but laced with venom. "And you forget, Charlotte, when the bloodline moves, it's not out of desperation. It's out of necessity." She stepped closer, almost daring him. "Then maybe it's necessary someone finally stops you." The crowd watching on the big screen in the arena erupted. You could feel the energy shift. Roman didn't react outwardly, but Heyman could see it. The challenge had gotten under his skin. Before Roman could respond, Kevin Owens appeared from another hallway, glaring directly at him. Funny, Owens said, I was just thinking the same thing. The tension now was nuclear. Charlotte and Owens standing side by side, Roman and Jimmy staring them down. The seeds of an unholy alliance were being planted right in front of everyone's eyes. And the scariest part, Roman didn't walk away this time, he stepped forward. The tension in the arena was like nothing anyone had felt before. Roman Reigns was in the ring, pacing back and forth like a caged animal, the tribal chief mask slipping to reveal the rage underneath. Paul Heyman stood in the corner, hands trembling, because even he knew, tonight was different. The crowd was still chanting, some for Roman, some for CM Punk, but the air shifted when that music hit. Musical note, cult of personality, blared through the speakers and the fans exploded. CM Punk walked out, slow and deliberate, mic in hand, eyes locked on Roman with the kind of look that said this isn't about titles anymore, this is personal. Roman leaned on the ropes, smirking, but his jaw clenched when Punk raised the mic. You think you run this place? Punk said, voice dripping with venom. You've been hiding behind your family, your little bloodline, but last week, you crossed the line. And now, I'm not here to wrestle you, I'm here to end you. The crowd roared, the camera cut to Solo Sikoa, who had slid into the ring behind Punk. Everyone thought Punk was done for, but at the last second, Punk turned and hit Solo with the mic right to the face, then unloaded a flurry of punches. Roman rushed forward, but Punk ducked, hit the ropes, and nailed Roman with a flying knee to the jaw. The tribal chief hit the mat, the crowd losing their minds. Heyman was screaming, no, 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 while referees swarmed the ring to stop the fight. But Punk wasn't finished. He grabbed the mic again, leaning over Roman's body. You want war. You just got it. The show ended with Punk standing tall over Roman Reigns, the crowd deafening, and the bloodline in absolute chaos. Seth Rollins was a man unraveling. The confident smirk, the cocky swagger, gone. Now he was pacing like a caged animal, muttering under his breath, gripping the bandage on his arm where the doctors had worked on him earlier. Becky was in the hospital bed behind that door, and for the first time in years, he didn't know if he was the hero or the villain in this story. The cameras caught Seth leaning his head against the hospital hallway wall, tears streaming down his face. Not from pain, but from the crushing realization of what he'd done. I didn't mean to, he kept whispering, but his voice cracked so badly that even the nurses paused to look. Inside, Becky was hooked to monitors. Bruised, pale, but still with that fire in her eyes. The doctors warned everyone she needed rest, but the second she opened her mouth, the heat came back. Tell him, I'm not afraid of him, she told the nurse, voice raspy but defiant. He might have knocked me down, but he'll never break me. Back at WWE headquarters, Triple H was furious. Not, cut a promo. Furious, real life, veins popping, phone slamming furious. You don't put your hands on another superstar like that, especially not your own wife. He barked in a closed-door meeting with producers. Rumors were already spreading about fines, suspensions, and even a possible firing. But then, as if fate wanted to pour gasoline on the fire, a leaked video surfaced online. Not the TV footage. Not the WWE.com highlight. No, this was shaky cell phone video from a fan in the front row, showing a completely unedited angle of Seth shoving Becky, harder than anyone realized. The crowd in the clip gasped. Security rushed in, and Seth's face, it didn't look like shock. It looked like rage. Social media lost its mind. #FireSeth trended worldwide. Becky's fans demanded justice. Seth's defenders claimed it was an accident. And in the middle of it all, Becky's best friend, Charlotte Flair, posted one cryptic tweet. When a man shows you who he really is, believe him. By the end of the night, WWE announced an emergency in-ring segment for Raw. Seth Rollins would have to face the entire WWE universe and explain himself. The question was, would Becky show up too? Seth's world was collapsing in real time. The crowd was still buzzing with mixed emotions, some furious at him, others confused, and a disturbing few actually cheering his descent into darkness. The cameras caught every twitch of his jaw, every dart of his eyes as he realized, there was no going back. Backstage, chaos had taken over. The medics were now rushing Becky through the loading area, but the second Seth turned the corner and saw her being lifted into the ambulance, something inside him broke again, but not in a good way. He didn't run to apologize. He didn't even try to stop them from closing the doors. Instead, he stared at her, his eyes hollow, and said in a low voice only she could hear before they shut him out. You made me do this. The doors slammed. The ambulance sped off, sirens screaming into the night. Adam Pearce, flanked by WWE security, marched straight toward Seth. Rollins, you're done for the night. Get your gear and get out before I have you escorted out of the building. Seth laughed. A sick, bitter laugh, and stepped closer, his eyes locked on Pierce like a predator who had just found new prey. You think you can throw me out? I am Monday Night Raw. You're just a suit holding a clipboard. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Security reached for him, but Seth shoved one of them back, his voice rising. No one touches me unless I say so. I'm not leaving until every single person here understands that I am untouchable. That's when the crowd gasped. Out of nowhere, Cody Rhodes stormed onto the scene. He didn't wait for words. He didn't wait for explanations. He charged Seth, slamming him into the wall with enough force to rattle the entire backstage area. You've gone too far this time, Cody growled, fists tightening in Seth's gear. Seth smirked, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. And you're next. Security finally swarmed, pulling them apart as Cody fought to get one more punch in. Seth, laughing manically now, let them drag him away, his voice echoing through the hallway. This is just the beginning. The cameras cut back to the arena, but the fans knew one thing. Whatever Seth Rollins had just unleashed tonight, it wasn't over. It was only the opening chapter of something far darker.